welcome back to the shop. So we're back on the blade making project. So if you haven't seen the first video on making lawnmower blades, I'll put a link up here to go to this very first video. This will be the second video. And I wanted to report to you back what I found out by using that set of blades we made in the first video. I was pleasantly surprised at how well they worked. Overall, the blades did exceptionally well with a few hang-ups. Number one, I don't know what alloy we're working with, so we started with just basically hot rolled steel. So these experimental blades were made with hot rolled steel. Let me show you the blades. The edges held up very, very well. Almost no wear on them. As a matter of fact, if I wasn't such a stickler on keeping sharp lawnmower blades, I could probably mow the grass one more time without sharpening those blades. Now, I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here. I actually did find something out in the yard up under some bushes, an old piece of farm implement, and this blade hit that farm implement and it dinged it up pretty bad. Nothing we can't fix with a grinder, but it proves that the blades will hold up to some abuse, even just being plain hot rolled steel. Now, a lot of folks make comments about these blades saying they wouldn't cut with a darn, they would be horrible, and a lot of different things. And of course, this is just an experiment to see if we can do it and what we can get away with. These actual set of blades cut like a golf course mower. They were unbelievably good in a straight line. But as soon as the mower started to make a turn, I wound up with three sections of grass that were swirled sticking up right in the middle, and that was right where the bolt held the blade on. And let me explain to you the science of why I think that happened. This is a factory blade here, and the factory blade has a lift on each corner, and that lift is what we're going to try to replicate today. That lift creates a negative pressure underneath the grass. It stands the grass up straight so the blade can cut it off. Think of it a little bit like when you go to the barber shop. The barber uses the comb to hold your hair out either before he cuts it or before he runs the buzzers through it. It's kind of the same thing. We want to get all of the grass up so we can cut it off even. Without that lift on the back, the blades are literally cutting the grass like they are. When the blade spins around right here a lot in the center, it had a tendency, it looked like to me, to twist the grass. The grass had it twisted, and because it was twisted, it began to fall over and wasn't lifted up to be cut off. So I think we're going to have to put a lift in these blades to make them work. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, my plan is anything but simple, but definitely not hard. This right here is my little press brake that was made by Swag Off-Road. This is a do-it-yourself kit you can buy. It goes in the Harbor Freight or similar 20-ton hydraulic press. I bought this a bunch of years ago. I put it together, and it's super handy for a small shop. Allows you to make a lot of bends and up to 1/4-inch material here in the shop without having to outsource things like I do for the bigger stuff. The neat thing about this little press brake is that this press brake is actually a finger brake, which means that these dies come in a bunch of different sizes. Here they are. And you can buy them individually or as a set so that you can bend all kinds of odd shapes here in a small shop. So my idea is to use this to bend these blades. Now, I have to have a way to be able to replicate this bend every time and get it the same. That's the difficulty in using this setup. This setup doesn't have a depth stop. There's no way to stop it other than you manually controlling your hydraulic press. But who wants to hold a tape measure under there every little crank of the hydraulic press? Here's what I came up with to limit the throw of this hydraulic press. If we just take a bolt, this is a 9/16 bolt with a nut on it, and I put one here, and I put one here, and I weld these nuts on right here, I'll be able to screw those nuts up and down and stop this thing from going any further. Now, granted, I know that if I put 20 tons of pressure on it, I can probably bend the bolts. There's got to be a little bit of operator discretion here. I also know that it gives me a very limited amount of throw, probably about 1.5 inches of throw. But the neat thing is, I just put a shorter bolt in there and do the same thing. So when I weld this on here and I get my depths adjusted exactly where I want them, I want to be able to lock it. I want to be able to make it so that that thing can't move back or forth through vibrations and moving it around. So I thought, that's simple. I'll take a nut, I'll just screw a nut on the top and lock the two nuts together that'll hold them tight. Not going to work that well. The reason is the nut, when I turn it, will hit the guide for the press. So I said, all right, well, I've got to come up with a 9/16 nut, and I needed to have a way to have that same 9/16 thread in the inside and a smaller diameter than here so that I can just finger tight it down to help jam it or lock it together. You know, when you sit around and you think about how you're going to do something, you can come up with a whole lot of ways to make something, and a very simple project can get very complicated in your head the more ways and the cool ideas you come up with. We ain't building a watch, we're building lawnmower blades. We'll save the super cool stuff for building cannons and watches. So here's what I came up with. I've got a bolt here. This is a 9/16 bolt. I'm going to take it in the bandsaw and I'm going to cut the head of this bolt off. That'll allow me to grab the shank of this bolt with the 3-jaw chuck in the lathe. I've got a nut on here. This nut's going to be almost screwed all the way on, but not tight. I'm going to put another one on there, and then I'm going to grab this nut right here with a wrench, and I'm going to tighten it. I'm going to tighten it and jam this nut tight. Then I'm going to take this one over here, and I'm just going to run it finger tight. And there's a reason for my science here. I'm going to get on this one. I'm going to honk on this one pretty good, and here's what I'm trying to accomplish. When this spins in the lathe cutter will come in this direction. And when the lathe cutter strikes it, it will continually try to tighten this nut. We're only going to cut on these 2 nuts. We're not going to cut on this nut. We're going to take the shoulders right off this nut. We're going to turn it to a smaller diameter, and maybe we'll even get a little crazy here and I don't know, knurl it. We'll see. We'll see what happens, see what I feel like when I get there. But if I leave the shoulders on this nut, then what I'll be able to do is put a wrench on it and back this off of here, have a way to grab it, because these will be smooth, and if I do decide to knurl them, I don't want to put a pair of pliers on the knurling and mess the new fancy knurling all up, right? So we're going to give that a try. Now, first things first, we need to get the lathe work done. We need to get in our safety gear. We need to weld both of these nuts in place. We need to get a couple of measurements and figure out a repeatable way to make this bend. All right, guys, here's a little trick for cutting a head off a bolt. So you take a nut and you make sure the nut's pretty close to the same diameter across. This one's slightly different, if you can see there. What I do is I just thread it on there. We just get the flats to line up on the bench. Now, of course, we're going to use something to keep our fingers out of the way, but this keeps the bolt on an even plane. You don't wind up with a crooked cut on the end of the blade. Now, this isn't perfectly square. It's not a perfect right angle here. But for what we're doing, it doesn't really matter. And I'm not going to spend all day digging through all my nuts to find, said something funny. So I'm not going to spend all afternoon digging through a bucket full of old hardware to try to find one that's the exact size. This is pretty close, and this will work perfect for what we're doing. So step 1 done. So we cut the head off the bolt. We got it caught up in the 3-jaw chuck. I've tightened all 3 of these nuts up. Actually, I've just kind of hand tightened these. And then I took the last one there and I went down on that one pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to round these nuts off, just make them so they don't have any flats on them anymore. Probably take them a little bit further than that. There is no number, there is nothing. This is just a little bit of by guess and by gosh. We seem to be doing a lot of that lately, but that's okay. So now the question is, do I want to knurl it? I mean, it's kind of hard to say no when the knurler's sitting right here, right? So first things first, let's square the Ellis tool post to the chuck. We have a nice square fit. And we know that we squared off with the face of this chuck, and we're for all intents and purposes, we're now square. So there's a whole science to knurling, and you can find all the science behind it in the machinery's handbook. We're not going to worry about that today because all I'm looking for is a little grippy grip, and I just want to do it and get on with it. Really not too bad, all things considered. Now, it looks like to me we made it right to the edge, so I can't wait to get these 2 apart and see how they look. It's got a nice knurl on it. Now keep in mind this is 2 pieces, so we'll get it back over there to the workbench and I'll take it apart, and those will be our 2 knurled nuts. Simple enough, right? Alright, so that went a lot better than I expected. The little arbor that we made came out pretty good. You can see there's a few little hitchhikers here on this. Here's the little part we made, and I gotta tell you, I'm impressed. What I did do off camera is I re-chucked this in the lathe. Once I got it off here, I re-chucked it in the lathe, and I screwed this back on up against this just finger tight, and I took the file and I broke the edge on it. It just felt like so crappy cheap, and I just couldn't stand it. I had to break the edge and, at least do the job right. Essentially what's going to happen here is this is going to be our jam nut. It's going to be how we lock this thing down from being able to go any further. So our next order of business is going to be to get the workbench cleared off a little bit. Mark out on the same side where we want to put these nuts. This piece does lift off of here. It's pretty heavy actually. And so what we'll do is we'll get it all jigged up, marked out where I think it should go. Then I'll take this off, we'll lay it on the workbench, and we'll just MIG weld it in place. Again, we're not building a watch here. We want this to be nice and square to the workpiece this way, and we want it to be in a vertical plane this way so that we're up and down, and that we don't have a slant this way or this way. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to get this welded on here. All right, folks, I've got my safety gear on. We're over here to get this welded. I'm not gonna lie to you, it is blistering hot today. It's about 105, 106. I'm not staying in this suit any longer than I have to. So we're just gonna get the safety gear on, get these nuts welded on here, and get out of this monkey suit. I've marked out where both of the nuts need to go. What I've done here is, that was our arbor that we cut off on the bandsaw. I'm gonna put that inside of here. I'm still gonna leave myself a flat to use to find square with, but I wanna protect the threads from any of the MIG beads getting on there to booger up the threads in there. So I just screwed that arbor in there as a sacrificial piece. Throw some gloves on. We are lock, cocked, and ready to rock on the MIG machine over there. Gonna be welding with a Lincoln Electric Power MIG 210 MP. Really like that machine. It's very, very easy to use for the beginner, but yeah, it gives you enough flexibility as an experienced welder to be able to get in there and make a lot of adjustments that some of the basic welders don't allow you to do. All right, so here's what we got. We got our stop built for this. Now we need to go over and drag out the hydraulic press, get it all set up to be able to press this part out. Now, one last final detail before we head over to the hydraulic press. I really don't know how to shape these. Gotta be honest, I'm gonna just do it by a little bit of a guess. As of right now, I don't want this much lift. I know I don't need that much lift, and the more lift I have, the more sand I kick up, the quicker the blades wear out. I know I need a little bit of lift, but I don't think I need that much. So here's what I'm gonna try to do. I'm gonna try to make a similar shaped wing, but with less lift, less bend. We're gonna try that. We'll see how it works. Here's where we're at behind me. I got my little 20-ton hydraulic press. It does a great job. This one has for me. Modified this a little bit. I took the 20-ton jack that was on it off, and I put a pneumatically operated 20-ton jack on here just because I was using it a lot, and pumping it up and down, up and down, up and down just got to be a bit monotonous, so I put a pneumatic jack in here. What I've done is marked a line from here 1 5/8 inches, and from here to here 6 inches, connected the dots. That's going to be my bend line. That is roughly what was bent on the other blade. I'm going to try to put just a little bit of lift in it, not a lot. Again, this is an experiment. We're trying it to see how it works. So what I'm essentially going to do is get our part in place. I'm already connected to the air hose, and everybody's back. Everybody's got their safety glasses involved. Well, that might be a little more lift than I want. Let's try the other side. See if we need to take a little lift out of it. So, kind of what I thought was going to happen here is happening. Let me show you. Because the V is so wide in the female portion of the die, it's only contacting here. So what it's doing is it's making a tight bend here, and it's not continuing down the radius. Let me think for a minute and then see if I can come up with a fix. Let me tell you what I did off camera. I added a couple of pieces of angle iron. So let me explain what I mean there. This bottom die in here is just a piece of 2-inch angle iron. And on top of that piece of 2-inch angle iron is a piece of like 1.5 inches. And on top of that is a piece of 1.25 inches. And on top of that 1.25 inches is a piece of 1 inch. But what happens is, as we stack those up, that piece of angle iron gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you remember earlier when we tried to bend that first piece, we wound up just having a little bend right here on the back. And the reason for that is we had a real wide opening. So when we set that blade in there sideways, all we were able to do was just to make contact with that little back corner. Now, if you're making a nice 90-degree bend and say a piece that's that long, it's not a big deal, right? It actually makes it easier for the press to bend it because it makes the moment or the lever where it's going to bend it a little bit longer. By stacking that angle iron in there, we make that piece much tighter and much tighter. But in doing that, we make more and more of the area have contact back here. So it makes it more and more difficult for the press to be able to bend this piece of metal because that lever, so to speak, gets a little bit smaller. Truthfully, I took a couple of practice pieces after I looked through my metal pile to kind of get the angle where I wanted it, and I did that off camera just to save a bunch of repetitiveness over and over and over. I also dialed in our little stops here. They're just about where we want them. This is the blade blank here. And basically same thing we did before. This measurement is 1.5 inches from the back corner. The back corner doesn't have any grind wear on it. And it's 6 inches long. I drew a line between the 1.5 inches and the 6 inch mark. I'm gonna put the die on top of that. I'm gonna bend it until it hits the stops. So it's in there. We got the safety glasses on, the mom on speed dial, as AVE would say. Actually, it's more like the wife on speed dial. And let's let her have it. And there you have it. One blade bent. So let's do the other side. Lock off our hydraulic cylinder. Here's the original blade. Might be easier to do it this way. Here's the original blade. A lot less lift in this blade. There's a lot more lift in this original set of blades here. So we're going to try these and see how much less they are prone to wear, and if they wear too quickly, we might even put a little less lift in them. And then the next set, we might even try a little bit different alloy. Well, folks, I'm pretty tickled with the way things went today. As you can see, we've got 2 sets of blades. The old set that we tried once, we went ahead and put a little lift on the back of them. We got a new set of blanks bent out. Really happy. I'd like to give a little shout out to my friend Terry Cullen, who talked out the idea of the stop system with me. If you haven't already subscribed to the DoRite Fabrication YouTube channel, please go down below and make sure you subscribe. Also, you can follow us between the projects on Instagram under DoRite Builder or on the DoRite Fabrication Facebook page. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw here today. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and like us on Facebook, please. Somewhere down below here is a link. See you soon.